It sounds like you guys have had quite an interesting 8 weeks. I just heard there that you'd been given real life challenges that you had to solve. And what you'll have learned is that sometimes it's quite difficult, challenges take longer than you think, and you need something which is up there. You need a special kind of mindset to solve those problems. Sometimes it takes a long time. You have to think in a different way in order to get to where you've got to tonight. I want to share with you a quick story about a real life problem that I encountered and maybe give you some ideas of how I overcame it. On February the 10th of 2018, I was riding my bicycle in the mountains between Sharjah and Kalba. I was coming down the road at around 60 kilometers an hour. As I came down that road, I saw a truck ahead of me. And as I got closer to that truck, the truck slowed down. And at the very last minute, the truck pulled over in front of me. When that truck pulled over in front of me, I had an incredible challenge. As I hit the front of the truck, I then hit a brick wall. Hitting a brick wall at 54 kilometers an hour has a very interesting impact on your body and also on your mind. And as I moved fast towards that wall with my bicycle still attached to me, I turned my shoulder and I hit the wall and I was on the floor in front of the wall. I knew that something had happened. I started to try and move my fingers. I started to try and move my toes. And they moved, a very small amount. But I now had a huge challenge. I couldn't breathe very well. And when I realized that I couldn't breathe very well, lots of blood started coming out of my mouth. I immediately thought something in my shoulder was broken because it was very hard to move it. But I didn't really know why this blood was coming out of my mouth. On that particular day, I was in exactly the middle location between Sharjah and Kalba. 45 minutes to an hour one way, 45 minutes to an hour the other way. There was no one close by except my 3 friends that were riding with me. There was no hospitals except the hospitals in those cities. I laid there on the floor and it became harder and harder to breathe. And I knew I didn't have much time left. So I said to myself, right now is one of the biggest challenges I'm going to face maybe in my whole life. Similar to some of the problems you guys have been facing. You've been looking at things and trying to figure out. And I was looking at this situation thinking, how am I going to get out of it? So every single second, I had to fight to breathe. Something that we do since you've been in here for the last 10 or 15 minutes. You just breathe easily. But it was becoming incredibly difficult. If you look at the screen, the picture on the left, I was in intensive care in Kalba Hospital. Some oxygen going in, and just a little bit of graze on my shoulder. The picture on the right really paints the picture of what went on. Count with me, 3rd rib down, there's 1 break. If you go down to the left, on the same rib, 2, down 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 breaks. That's what my rib cage looked like. And you can see the 1 3 up from the bottom, one of my ribs was coming out in the wrong direction. Which, this was all fine. This was the best of the situation. My scapula, which is your shoulder blade, the flat bit on your back, had also broken into pieces because of how I'd hit the wall. But this stuff's really straightforward. After a few weeks, it starts to come back together. Luckily, I have a little bit of muscle, it pulls it together. But what made me unable to breathe was just inside your rib cage. Who knows what's just inside your rib cage? Your heart's one of them. Your lungs. My left lung is almost like a football. It's this big until you jump too hard on it, and then it goes to this big as it explodes. And my left lung had exploded. It was no longer working. And I was laid in this hospital bed, still having to have oxygen. The issues that you guys have faced over the last 7 or 8 weeks is very similar to what I faced. You have to think in a different way. You have to break things down. You have to ask from your mentors what to do. You have to speak to your teachers. All of the things that you guys have learned were things that I learned in this situation. And as I sat there in the hospital bed, when I was released to the main ward after 3 days in intensive care, I was actually pretty happy. Thumbs up for everybody. And I sat and I spoke to one of my friends, and he said, "What are you going to do now?" At that particular point, I was riding my bike. I was training for an ultra cycling race to set a world record. And I turned around to him with this oxygen mask on, and I told him, "Well, I don't think it's a good idea if I go cycling anymore." I said, "But if you can't ride a bike, I can definitely run." So I started thinking about running. At this stage, you can see my left hand was down by my leg. The most movement I had was lifting my left hand to here and rotating it so it was open. Once I figured out I could do that, I thought if I did it more, I'd get better. Because the more we do things, the better we get. So I lifted that left hand up every hour and I just rotated it 10 times. That was all I could do. Running was in the back of my mind, but in front of me, all I could do was the smallest thing. There's certain times in your projects, I'm sure, over the last 8 weeks and over the coming years, that you'll be looking for a big answer, for a big solution. I'd found it in running. Running was in the back of my mind, like I told you. But the smallest thing is what was going to take me there. It took me a number of weeks to be able to walk on my own. The first day I went for a walk around the hospital, had to be carried with the physio. It was a very slow process. And often, to get to your goal, it has to be slow. But I'd set a goal. I said to one of my friends, I said, "Summer's coming. In July, we'll run across Corsica." Corsica is a small island on the south of France and on the west coast of Italy, in the middle of the ocean. It's 195 kilometers across and has an elevation of mountains bigger than Everest, 13,000 meters. Mount Everest is about 8,500 meters. So I said to my friend, "Why don't we run across it? That'll be a really nice challenge." So we started to look at it, and normally it takes about 14 days to cross it. Because we really wanted to challenge ourselves, we said we'll cross it in 5 days, which we did. Not satisfied with that, I was running one day with one of my friends, and I said, 2018 was going to be my biggest year, but my accident happened. I need to do something a little bit special. I need to help the people in this country, in Dubai, children in schools, adults with children in schools, and we need to do something quite special. So I thought, well, what's coming up? You guys might have heard of Dubai Fitness Challenge. 30 minutes of exercise a day for 30 days. So I thought, well, it could be quite cool if I call these guys up and we do a nice little campaign together. So I called them up and I said to the organizer, I'd never met this person before. I said to the organizer, "I like the sound of your campaign. It was really successful in its first year in 2017. I've got a small idea for you for 2018. He said, yeah, sure. I said, it's going to be great. We're going to activate all the schools. We're going to try and inspire people. We're going to get people to come and run with me. He was like, that's fantastic. You'll run for 30 minutes a day for 30 days. I said, no. So I'm going to run a marathon every day for 30 days. And I think the guy was a bit confused on the end of the phone. He said, no, Marcus, you don't understand our campaign. He said, our campaign is just to inspire people just to do 30 minutes. I said, yeah, that's why it's such a good idea, because if I do all this marathons every single day, then it's going to be easy for everyone to do 30 minutes of exercise. And he said, no, this is a silly idea. And I was persistent. I called him back. I called him again. I sent him YouTube clips. Until on the 26th of October, I ran my first marathon. And I woke up every single day for 30 days, and I kept on running marathons. And I was like, isn't it weird what's happening? And I thought to myself, actually, it's not weird what's happening. It's not weird at all what's happened this year. And I went back in my Instagram to the 9th of February, and I found this quote that I'd posted on my Instagram page, that everything happens for a reason. And I thought, I posted that for a reason, and the next day I had my accident. And I want you to think about that. If you can't get the solution at the start, there's a reason why you can't. If it takes a bit longer, there's a reason why it's taken a little bit longer. Not all of the problems that you face you're going to solve straight away. You guys have been working for 8 weeks to get to where you are today. It sometimes takes time. But it's quite good if it takes time, because along the way, good things happen. And when I was out running, loads of people came and supported me. I used to start at 5 o'clock every morning. We used to run all different routes around Dubai, and it gave people an opportunity to come and run with me. I was super happy that I was able to give this guy on the left an opportunity to come and run with me one day as well. For those of you who don't know, he's the Crown Prince. It's his initiative. And this was the highlight, or one of the highlights for me, of those 30 days. It's quite a funny story. On the night of the 27th day, I got a phone call, and they said, you need to be at this particular place at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, because a gentleman wants to come running with you. Okay, we'll go. And I had some of my friends with me, and they were running, and I thought, oh, I better go to this place on my own, just in case the gentleman I'm going to see is quite important. And this gentleman turned up and ran around 9-10 kilometers with me. Which also shows, for us as citizens, residents here in the UAE, what sort of support the Dubai Fitness Challenge and a lot of the campaigns around the city have, that the Crown Prince himself is also going to run. I thought that was a pretty cool highlight, and then this happened. They let me run on the world's tallest building. I'm still not too sure how that all came around. A lot of people ask me, how did you get up every single day and run a marathon for 30 days? A marathon is 42.2 kilometers. Each of my marathons took me just over 4 hours, except the last one, which is a whole story and presentation on its own. I ran it in 3 hours 45 at the end of 30 days. It's a big, I don't know how that happened. But a lot of people ask me, how did you do it? And it's similar to what you guys have done. You've just woken up every single day of the last 8 weeks. Sometimes you've had to be pushed out of the bed by your parents. Some days you've had to be rewarded with certain things that you probably shouldn't have been rewarded with. Some days your teachers have told you things that they still need to give you. And there's all these sorts of things that go on. But I want to tell you one thing that I think is super important and helped me a lot in my marathons, is that there was never a choice. You guys chose to do what you've done for the last 8 weeks, so you've made it happen. I chose to run a marathon. I didn't choose to get to day 15 and stop. I chose to run 30. And you've chosen to do what you've done over the last 8 weeks, and I think that's incredible. So well done to you guys. Before I finish up, I want to share with you the real reasons why I ran those marathons, because I think you might get something from this. Number one is to try and help me understand as a human being what my potential really is. As importantly, within that, is to help you guys understand what your potential is. Because hopefully, one of you, maybe not tonight, because you should be in bed on time, but tomorrow will run further than you've ever run before. And if that happens, my time here is super well worth spent. The second thing is, as you guys have seen, when you do something for a period of time that's super challenging, you learn so many things. You've learned things over the last 8 weeks that will help you in all different areas of your life. And that's something that's very special. And the third thing is, I did this for my family, to make them proud. My mom, my dad, and my wife at the top. I just want them to wake up every morning and be proud of what I've done as a son. I think if you keep 3 things, if it's 5 or 6, it gets complicated. You figure out those 3 things and keep focus on them, you can do some pretty cool things. We'll finish up with a short video.